Develop speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, everybody. It is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas, and we've got a jam-packed morning show for you, like always, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And we got to do a little dancing and prancing on this one, because there's so many clips that I want to play on the first hour of this that I can't play, that I simply cannot play. In fact, if you were watching the broadcast last night, we did Mixed Martial Mindset with John Fitch. The last 15, 20 minutes or so, I had to go exclusively over to Rumble and Rockfin, because despite us reading from mainline authoritative sources like the World Health Organization, okay? And look, this treaty, it's no bueno. It's no bueno. It's not good, okay? And I'm going to show you how the authoritative sources use semantics and chicanery to really try to push their narrative and call you misinformation and disinformation, while I assure you, and I'm going to show you again and again and again in this video, the people at the top do not care about you or anybody in the serf class. And I got news for you. You're rocking 6 figures. You're rocking 7 figures. You're a serf to these people. You're just as low as everybody else, buddy. That's the real deal. So I want to talk about Ohio for a little bit, because we're going to come back to an independent chemical expert who is down there taking samples, who some people have misidentified. And Kristen Megan, who I've actually met in the past and has done really good work on geoengineering, solar radiation management, prolonged jet contrails. We don't like to say the chem word here, okay? And a lot more. That person does a podcast with them. We're going to name him and show that video. But I also see some actual misinformation being spread around. Now, if you watched the broadcast last night, we were really within an hour or so of the story breaking that there were individuals on a twin jet engine out of a Clinton airport in Arkansas, can't make this up, that all died, that were part of an investigative team going to Ohio, okay? They were not going to East Palestine or Palestine, okay? They weren't going there. They were going to the other shady explosion in a metal factory. And so much of our infrastructure has seen these mysterious fires and explosions and all these derailments. And we're not supposed to ask any questions, because the people in charge obviously love us. And they've proven so much over the years how much they love us. And I can't help but think to myself, when we go back to air quality, just on a macro level, of what happened at the World Trade Center and how we especially featured in Loose Change Final Cut that the EPA and others lied, that what? You had the governor of Jersey being like, no, everything's cool. Go ahead. No, everybody can breathe. Everything's handy dandy. They lied about that air quality. Well, I got news for you guys. They continue to lie. They're liars. They indemnify themselves all the time. And that's why they use really Bernaysian tools and language to push their narrative. And I'm going to show you some of that narrative push in a minute after we play some clips. But first, I want to show you this. So I type in pandemic accord because although this was shot down in May, it was talked about over a year ago, etc. I wanted to see what was out there. CNA is really the last one to cover it in these new provisions where they've revised things. And I'm going to give you the authoritative fact checks, the whole nine, what they're telling you. Oh, this doesn't get rid of our sovereignty. Look, right here. Independent fact check. They've already told you, when I say they, Google, which is Alphabet, which is YouTube, which is a Trojan horse civilian system that has partnered with NASA and others in quantum computing and artificial intelligence. You can't make this stuff up. Says the WHO pandemic accord doesn't replace U.S. sovereignty. Well, duh. Why would it have to replace it when you're harmonizing with it? Just like all these National Institute of Health, CDC, they're not a governing body. They can't actually institute policies. They can make suggestions, right? You actually have to acquiesce. But did you and I get a vote on what happened to us over the past several years? Because they loved us so much? So first things first is we're going to play, again, really sparse coverage here, guys. Really sparse coverage. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play this clip, mainlining how, this is a good thing. Oh, it's all really good. Then I want to play a short excerpt of this 2+ hour, and this is from a few weeks ago as well, at a European Parliament 3 weeks ago, where this presentation is given, where they utilized American universities, I believe one of the Massachusetts universities, to track all social media during that nightmare and seeing where the narratives ranked and who trusted who. And of course, it's all Russian disinformation and China bad and, oh, we got to come together and we love to say the word equity. I watched the whole 3 hours, but I watched some of it. It was just ridiculous. But this part in particular, I thought was extremely important. But first, let's go to this really revisiting of the new pandemic accord.
The World Health Organization is set to hold a meeting today in Geneva to review new rules for dealing with pandemics. The Pandemic Accord is the Global Health Agency's effort to shore up defenses against new pathogens after COVID-19 claimed more than 6.6 million lives. The WHO already has a treaty setting out rules and obligations for all countries in case of public health events.
Oh, rules and obligations. Wait a minute. I thought this didn't challenge anybody's sovereignty. No, it's harmonizing with it. It doesn't replace anything. But there will be rules. And there will be obligations.
But the COVID pandemic has cast serious shadows on the agency's ability to investigate and contain major outbreaks.
As it should. I mean, again, what cartoon universe are we living in? And I'm going to show you again, most people didn't buy the Johnny nonsense. You know what the most powerful tool of their Johnny nonsense was? It was the televised propaganda, the traditional news outlets. That's how hardcore some people in my generation and the generations previous that are still around have clung to this stuff.
Proposals for the new pact include boosting transparency in data sharing and rules on equitable vaccine distribution.
Equitable vaccine distribution. I have a Davos clip from 2 weeks ago. It's like a 45-minute panel where I'm not going to play any of it here at YouTube because I can't when I want to say it. But you have a representative from Gavi just saying some of the most outrageous stuff. But again, showing you there's not a want, there's not a demand, there's not a desire for their product. Uh-oh. No. As he says it, you may be done with the C word, but the C word ain't done with you. Isn't that lovely? Thank you, Mr. Gavi, man.
We spoke earlier to Associate Professor Sanjaya Senanayake, an infectious diseases specialist at the ANU Medical School, and he says that while the world has endured a fresh pandemic, it may be tricky to enforce rules equally across the globe.
Oh, it may be really? Might it be tricky? Tricky. Rules and obligations.
The main factors are making sure that as a planet or as member nations, we're globally prepared to face pandemics and prevent them, of course, before they occur.
Again, they told you this was a once in a generation, once in a lifetime thing. Once in 100 years. And you notice how he slips up? He's like, it's for the whole planet or member nations. So I guess the planets that sign on to it, piece of that. Yeah. No, this is about global governance. This is about command and control. This is about a biomedical, fascistic, track, trace, and database society rolled into a Johnny-nonsense social and carbon credit score.
We want to make sure that there's sustained funding. There's no point having all these plans in place if countries, particularly poorer countries, can't afford to incorporate them into their budget. So that has to be something that will involve global cooperation. And we have to make sure at a World Health Organization level that we promote trust between member nations so they don't feel scared about coming out about an outbreak. And face the problems that South Africa did when they identified some variants because of their very good public health system.
Oh, they've got a very good public health system. You know what? A very good public health system, no matter where they lived on Earth, billionaires. The billionaires had great public health systems for some reason. Just so weird that I didn't see billionaires dropping dead during this whole thing. Isn't that odd? We could probably talk about that on the other side when we go to redvoicemedia.com/Jason, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. So, before we get to the narrative management, okay, I want to show you the outright fact check. So, first of all, you have the independent fact check over at YouTube, right? Right away. Oh, no, the World Health Organization is not, it's not going to replace U.S. sovereignty. Oh, no. Again, it's going to harmonize with it. It's going to have rules and obligations so we can have equitable care and a sustainable healthcare system. Yeah, okay. So here's another one of those in-your-face fact checks. Now, this goes back to the last time before it failed, because this is not getting much media coverage. But again, they convened a couple months ago to go over these revisions, and they really want this. They really want it.
On May 22nd, the World Health Organization will meet in Geneva to discuss how to best respond to future pandemics. Among the ideas is a U.S. proposed amendment to improve ways of detecting, reporting, and responding to public health events worldwide.
Now, I just want everybody to understand what he just said there. A U.S. proposed amendment. So one of the arguments that they're going to say about this is that nobody is beholden to the amendments put forward here in this treaty, right? if there are amendments, of course we're going to enforce them here, whether you or I, who had no say in these amendments or this treaty whatsoever, want to do. We get no say.
Some social media users are referring to this as a pandemic treaty and are using the hashtag #StopTheTreaty to voice their opposition to the amendment.
Ooh.
On a podcast hosted by Steve Bannon, former Minnesota Representative Michelle Bachmann claimed the amendment could give the WHO control over the United States. Several Verify viewers emailed us to ask about these claims. So let's verify. Would the pandemic treaty give the WHO control over governments during a global health crisis? Our sources are the International Health Regulations, proposed amendments to the regulations, and the WHO. The International Health Regulations are part of an international law that outlines the responsibilities of WHO member countries, like the U.S., when there's a public health emergency. It requires that countries report what's happening and that the WHO offer assistance. Earlier this year, the U.S. proposed several amendments to the regulations based on what we learned during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Again, our regulations, our proposed amendments.
They include adding early warning criteria, a request to provide genetic sequence data, and outlines a time frame for when and how countries can ask the WHO for support.
And a lot of other things that are terrible. But, you know, again, we're going to sugarcoat it and softball it.
It does not give the WHO authority over member countries. The amendment repeatedly states that countries can reject the WHO's assistance. So, no, the pandemic treaty would not give the WHO control over governments during a global health crisis.
How many times do we reject their assistance? So much so that the WHO is still the authoritative source over the largest video platform in the world, the second largest search engine in the world, only behind the first largest search engine in the world, Google, which it is a part of. Okay? No big deal. Yeah, no big deal. I mean, look at this guy. Hey, look at him. I mean, you can just say no whenever, right?
It doesn't give the agency any new authority and only outlines how they can help at the request of a member country. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Thank you so much, Brandon, because, you know, I always, in my sleep, actually, I'm constantly requesting help from the World Health Organization, okay, to have a better tomorrow and a better life, because I know they love me just like the government loves me. What planet are we on? So we're going to cut into this. This is European Parliament a few weeks ago, okay? And this hearing was the COVID-19's pandemic impact on democracy and fundamental rights in the EU. MEPs will discuss how to tackle misleading and false information, especially on social media. Especially on social media. How naughty. Okay, so let's kick it off here. Oh man, that's just not a good spot. Whatever, we're doing it this way.
Apart from designing constructive communication tools to bridge people across experiences and divides, our research center has been focusing on identifying who are the social media actors with the greatest influence in the context of the pandemic. Next slide. For this research, we examined Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pandemic-related posts from January 2020 to January 2022 in order to rank influencers by the total impact their COVID-19 posts have on pandemic narratives using total post engagements. Next slide. We then partnered with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health to categorize all social media accounts into various types of influencers, such as traditional news, politicians, public health organizations, and others.
So here again, take a look, because this should tell you everything, how powerful social media is and why they so badly need to control this narrative. Next
slide. So as you can see in this graph, politicians and political influencers are ranked among the most influential ones, whereas more expected actors, such as medical experts and public health organizations, ranked among the less influential ones.
So again, take a look at who they got up here. Now, they categorize Joe Biden with Donald Trump. Donald Trump way more influential, but they have politicians at the top. and then political influencers. And that's the vast majority of what you saw on traditional social media. And those, again, are against the traditional narrative. They're contrarian, if you will, but they won't put that out there. They won't act that way. Okay, notice who they did put here. Robert Reich. Get out of here. No one listens to Reich. Candace Owens, that's real. Disclosed TV, that's real. James Woods, they attacked him. That's real. AOC, unfortunately, real. But you notice traditional news is in the middle. Okay, that's the New York Times right there, etc. Really, that's Reich, too. It's the same thing. And then right under, if you look at it, 3 of the top 4 contrarian medical experts. Okay, they were higher on the totem pole than the Faucis of the world, the consensus medical experts. And at the very bottom, public health organizations like the World Health Organization, like the NIH, like the CDC. So that should just show you that the vast majority of people were like, no, I don't know. That's why they had to strong arm so many in this country. Okay, so when we go to the premium, we're going to have a lot more to say about all this stuff. I promise you that. But before we do that, I want to play this clip. We played it last night. I think it's really important. It goes into the treaty, and it really calls into question what's going on in Ohio right now. And then we're going to go to the chemical expert who's actually surveilling Ohio right now. Over 200 people watching, not even 100 thumbs up. Let's get the thumbs up. Subscribe and share, everybody. Here we go.
Economic Forum website, as of May 2023, 36 countries worldwide will have smart city governance initiatives. Surveillance monitoring, analysis, reporting technology. You'll have a digital ID that will track in real time your shopping, your entertainment, your activities, and your carbon footprint. You'll also have a 15-minute travel limit without a permit. A permit to travel. And if you exceed any of these things, you'll be denied access to daily activities. Obviously, no one would move into one of these cities voluntarily, but they don't have to, because the laws governing Agenda 2030 land development allows the government to seize polluted land and move their residents to these smart cities. If you're living somewhere where your land and water is poisoned, you don't get an option to opt out. Where has land and water been poisoned recently?
I mean, again, you got to ask these questions. So with that being said, we are going to move over to, let's see, where are we? Let's make sure we get the right one. Don't want to bring up anything we're not supposed to say here on the YouTube. This is Kristen Megan, and with Stephen Petty. So we're going to actually see Stephen Petty on the scene over in Ohio, right here. We're going to be playing these 2 videos. And hopefully our video doesn't get pulled down because we dared to show somebody who's doing, I don't know, independent testing of what seems to be a very, 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 very effed up situation that emphasizes how much the government obviously loves us. I mean, obviously they love us.
We're going to be looking for a lot of chemicals, including dioxin. We're doing a lot of soil sampling and water sampling. My view is that it was a bad decision to release it and burn it. So I have undergraduate and graduate degrees in chemical engineering. I mean, I've brought respirators and stuff with us. The problem is to wear a respirator, you need to know what to protect from, right? Hydrocarbons, acid gases. We're here, I think, the first group independently to try to figure out what's really here, because what they were measuring most of the time is what they call VOCs, which is just some generic. It's not a specific chemical, right? I couldn't, in good conscience, until we get some sampling data, know what to protect against. I've been involved in these before. They know that things are going to dissipate with time, so they measure things that don't really matter. There's evidence that when you burn vinyl chloride poorly, and it was definitely burned poorly because it had such a black plume. If you think of in the old days with a carburetor, if you had the air-fuel ratio wrong and you had black smoke, that meant you had too much fuel, not enough air. And that black is carbon, right? So it doesn't combust all the way to CO2. When there's incomplete combustion, there's evidence that part of the vinyl chloride goes to dioxin, and dioxin is one of the most deadly compounds known. But if you measured air, it has a lot of components like oxygen, nitrogen. It might have carbon monoxide, right? So if you measure VOCs, volatile organic carbons. That doesn't tell me anything other than you're measuring carbon. But I want to know, is it vinyl chloride? What is the individual component? So they purposely measure with a cheaper instrument total hydrocarbons, but I want to know what the components are.
Okay, so he's telling you they're already lying to you. Okay, if you needed any translation on that. They're purposely lying to you, saying they're testing for things to protect you when they're testing for things that will later protect them in court. Okay? And offset their knowledge of what the situation really was. So let's listen another minute or so with this gentleman. This is Stephen Petty on the scene over in Ohio.
You were the guy that made all the decisions. Would you have done a controlled burn? Well, there's the lie. It wasn't a controlled burn, it was an uncontrolled burn. See, I'm a chemical engineer as well as a top health and safety guy. I've got undergraduate and graduate degrees in chemical engineering.
You're the first actual expert that we've gotten to speak to. In your opinion, why do you believe that it was an uncontrolled burn? Why are you using that terminology when so far everywhere else we've seen that it was a controlled burn?
You could go to a place called West Liverpool downriver, and that's where they burn hazardous waste. And in a hazardous waste situation, they very carefully control the temperature and the amount of oxygen so that they get complete combustion, right? It's time, temperature, and amount of the air-fuel ratio. There's no controlling of the amount of air that gets in there. That's why you saw all that soot. So it's not a controlled burn, because a controlled burn would have to be like in a furnace or in your car or some system where you control the fuel, in other words, the vinyl chloride and the amount of oxygen. So they didn't do that. So it's an uncontrolled burn. One of the worst ways to determine exposure in general is to smell it, because if you smell the odor, guess what? You're already exposed, right?
How long have you been doing this?
30 years. I'm in most of the big named lawsuits as the exposure expert. It's a privilege. I get called in to try to figure some of this stuff out. So that's my job always, is what really happened, you know?
What really happened, you know? It's a privilege to go up against these monsters and liars and haters of humanity. No, I'm in all the big cases. These clips are going viral and need to. I'm already following the gentleman at Petty Podcast 1 is where you can follow him. That is Stephen Petty, okay? And once again, to really drive home and emphasize how much these people love you and how much they care about you, obviously, it's obvious how much they love you. You need only look to the Nord Stream pipeline attack and all that lovely stuff that's coming out from the bottom of the ocean, okay? If you believe them on any level, and when I say them, I'm talking about the establishment predator class that's selling you on a narrative that we're killing the planet and need to reduce our carbon footprints, and that, you know, carbon dioxide is the evil of all evils. Well, they just released it all in a mass genocide suicide attempt to the planet, apparently. And when I say they, I point to this article by Hirsch. All right, that still the mainstream media, other than Fox News, hasn't touched. Won't touch it. And it's extensive. And again, dollars to donuts, the guy got 80+% of it right. And that's why, after I play this clip here of a contractor, because they, even on the macro level, you're not allowed to know what's going on with this. Okay, that there were investigations, the Swedish in particular. I'm going to show you that via Jeffrey Sachs in front of the UN. Okay, this is why the UN is a nothing organization. It's going to do nothing with Sachs's testimony. But on a micro level, right, when the authorities come in, like they do, you're going to see in Ohio here, okay, they act like you're the criminal. They demand information from you, and then they refuse to give you information while they're on your property. After they've got a bunch of people to sign these waivers, essentially, of liability. Totally insane.
You're on private property here.
I'm sorry, I'm just asking you if you're taking samples.
I'm not, just like you refer me to your public information officer, have you taken samples?
I can't answer any of your questions.
You can't. Well, then why should I answer any of your questions?
Because this is not
Because of what?
We need to know who's coming and going on the site.
But this is private property.
We're working down here.
You're standing on private property right now.
I'm sorry, but I need to know.
And you know what? I'm sorry, I need to know. And her partner's in the corner here, by that blue tarp. Let's bring that out so you can see this angle. So they're in his backyard, okay? And anybody who has a local sewage system knows what this is, like the creek that's running through. And they got their nice little equipment on. They're taking their samples. They want to find out, are you taking samples? Oh, I can't tell you anything.
I have to check with my public information officer.
Okay.
You're on private property.
I'm sorry.
The landowner doesn't want you trespassing.
Like these people. Doesn't matter. We're the boss. Okay? So look, there's a few things I may disagree with Sachs about. You know, he pushes the sustainability stuff and the climate change stuff. But this is about 8 minutes of him addressing the United Nations, making them confront the reality of the pipeline incident and the absurdity of the excuses and the front stories that we've gotten. And, I mean, again, are you going to see this on CNN or MSNBC? Huh? Is that happening? Doubtful. Doubtful. By doubtful, I mean not a chance in hell. Not a snowball's chance in hell.
My name is Jeffrey Sachs. I am university professor at Columbia University. I'm a specialist in the global economy, including global trade, finance, infrastructure, and economic statecraft. I appear before the UN Security Council on my own behalf. I represent no government or organization in the testimony that I will deliver. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines on September 26th, 2022 constitutes an act of international terrorism and represents a threat to the peace. It is the responsibility of the UN Security Council to take up the question of who might have carried out the act in order to bring the perpetrator to international justice, to pursue compensation for the damaged parties, and to prevent future such actions. The consequences of the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines are enormous. They include not only the vast economic losses related to the pipelines themselves and their future potential use, but also the heightened threat to transboundary infrastructure of all kinds: submarine internet cables, international pipelines for gas and hydrogen, transboundary power transmission, offshore wind farms, and more. The global transformation to green energy will require considerable transboundary infrastructure, including in international waters. Countries need to have full confidence that their infrastructure will not be destroyed by third parties. Some European countries have recently expressed concern over the safety of their offshore infrastructure. For all of these reasons, the investigation by the UN Security Council of the Nord Stream explosions is a high global priority. The destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines required a very high degree of planning, expertise, and technological capacity. The Nord Stream 2 pipelines are a marvel of engineering. Each section of pipe is rolled steel of 4.5 centimeters thickness and with a pipeline internal diameter of 1.15 meters. The pipe is encased in concrete of 10.9 centimeters thickness. The weight of each section of concrete encased pipe is 24 metric tons. The Nord Stream 2 pipelines, some 1,200 kilometers in length, contain around 200,000 pipes. The pipelines sit on the sea floor. Destroying a pipeline of heavy rolled steel encased in concrete at depths of 70 to 90 meters requires a highly advanced technology for transportation of the explosives, diving to install the explosives, and detonation. To do so undetected in the exclusive economic zones of Denmark and Sweden adds greatly to the complexity of the operation. As a number of senior officials have publicly confirmed, an action of this sort must have been carried out by a state-level actor. Only a handful of state-level actors have both the technical capacity and access to the Baltic Sea to have carried out this action. include the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, Poland, Norway, Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, either individually or in some combination. Ukraine lacks the necessary technologies as well as access to the Baltic Sea. A recent report by the Washington Post revealed that the intelligence agencies of the NATO countries have privately concluded that there is no evidence whatsoever that Russia carried out this action. This also comports with the fact that Russia had no obvious motive to carry out this act of terrorism on its own critical infrastructure. Indeed, Russia is likely to bear considerable expenses to repair the pipelines. 3 countries have reportedly carried out investigations of the Nord Stream terrorism: Denmark, Germany, and Sweden. These countries presumably know much more about the circumstances of the terrorist attack. Sweden, in particular, has perhaps the most to tell the world about the crime scene, which its divers investigated. Yet instead of sharing this information globally, Sweden has kept the results of its investigation secret from the rest of the world. Sweden has refused to share its findings with Russia and turned down a joint investigation with Denmark and Germany. In the interest of global peace, the UN Security Council should require these countries to immediately turn over the results of their investigations to the UN Security Council. There is only one detailed account to date of the Nord Stream destruction, the one recently put forward by investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, ostensibly based on information leaked by Hersh by an unnamed source. Hersh attributes the Nord Stream destruction to a decision ordered by U.S. President Joe Biden and carried out by U.S. agents in a covert operation that Hersh describes in detail. The White House has described Hersh's account as, quote, completely and utterly false, unquote, but did not offer any information contradicting Hersh's account and did not offer any alternative explanation. Senior U.S. officials made statements before and after the Nord Stream destruction that showed the U.S. animus towards the pipelines. On January 27, 2022, Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland tweeted, quote, if Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward, end quote. On February 7th, President Biden said, quote, if Russia invades again, then there will be no longer Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it, end quote. When asked by the reporter how he would do that, he responded, quote, I promise you we will be able to do it, end quote. On September 30th, 2022, immediately following the terrorist attack on the pipeline, Secretary of State Antony Blinken declared that the destruction of the pipeline is, quote, also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs, end quote. On January 28th, 2023, Undersecretary Nuland declared in testimony to Senator Ted Cruz in the U.S. Senate, quote, I am, and I think the administration is, very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea, end quote. Such language is not at all appropriate in the face of international terrorism. I hope that the United States, together with all other Security Council members, will condemn this act of international terrorism and join together in an urgent UN Security Council-led investigation of this international crime in order to determine the truth. The truth is not yet known by the world, but it is knowable. More than ever, the world depends on the UN Security Council to do its work to stop the escalation to a new world war. The world will be safe only when the permanent members work together diplomatically to solve global crises, including the war in Ukraine and the rising tensions in East Asia. The UN Security Council provides the unique global venue for that peace-affirming work. More than ever, we need a healthy, functioning UN Security Council carrying out the mission assigned to it by the UN Charter.
Which it's not going to do. I want to say that right now. I'm glad that Jeffrey Sachs is able to deliver this message in front of all these people. He's very concise. Laid down the quotes, the timeline, the allegations, the circumstances, the logistics, the whole thing. The whole thing. You know, Sachs has been doing this for years now. Told the truth about Syria and the CIA. Telling the truth here. In my opinion, his words, unfortunately, are going to fall on deaf ears. I wish that weren't the case. I'll say it again, over and over and over and over. I want the United States out of the UN and the UN out of the US. Arrivederci. Let's turn the UN building into a museum of examples of globalist corruption and of that organization. That's what I'd love to see happen. Let's keep it. Let's keep all the flags. And then inside, one by one, we can out the corruption of those nations, including ourselves. That's when we will know we have truly won in this country and regained our constitutional republic, if that's at all possible. Because you got to defeat globalism, especially their brand of globalism with equity and sustainability and gender-affirming care as they push you towards a metaverse and a social and carbon credit score. You can't make this stuff up. Period. All right, I wanted to get to this story before we go over to the premium section. And the premium section going to be a banger. I think that we're going to watch this Davos. We're going to do a little Davos V-word watch-along with some big players. Get ready to buckle up. But this story right here, Mark Middleton's quote-unquote suicide is back in the news. And the Daily Mail has an exclusive story. We're going to read a lot of that. I would encourage you to check out Whitney Webb. Whitney Webb has done a podcast on Mark Middleton with Ed Berger. And for those that are completely unfamiliar with this story, this was a story that we have covered in this June. The judge sealed the photos of this supposed suicide, despite the fact that this man seemed to be shot and tied to a tree with an electrical cord around his neck, and they found no sign of the weapon that he supposedly shot himself with after tying himself to a tree with an electrical cord and being on land linked to the Clintons and a guy who was linked to Jeffrey Epstein. The grisly scene where a top Bill Clinton advisor was found hanged from a tree with a gunshot wound to his chest has finally been revealed 9 months after he died. But the sheriff's report into Mark Middleton's mysterious death raises more questions than answers, as it rules he died by suicide, despite no sign of the weapon that killed him. Middleton, 59, was found dead last May at the Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas, an hour west of Little Rock. Release of the report was held up after members of his family petitioned a judge. They were worried that pictures from the gory scene would be made public. Oh, don't worry, they made sure they weren't. The judge eventually ruled that the details could be released, but photographs could not. Okay? And, hey, there he is. Hey, Mr. Clinton, I can't wait to one day have a painting of you in a blue dress in one of my mansions in red pumps. I can't wait for that day, sir. One day. And don't worry, allegedly, you're going to get to fool around with my girl here, Ghislaine. Allegedly. And I think that's one of the things that's going to come out of the unsealed Epstein files that we're waiting on. Guys, there is no list. People are still asking, isn't there supposed to be a list? Isn't we supposed to get the list? There's no list. Let me repeat it. There's no list. No list is coming. Zero list. unsealed documents in the Virginia Giuffre Roberts case are allegedly coming. If you want those, we'll do a check right now to make sure that they haven't unlocked the list. If you want those, this is it right here. Take a look. Let's make sure that we do it right there. Last updated on the 23rd. Okay, see that? Last updated on the 23rd. That's today. Still don't have anything since the 7th. Okay, just pointing that out. Want to get that out there. The report, written by Perry County Sheriff Deputy Jeremy Lawson, says he was called to the ranch by worker Samantha McElroy, who had found Middleton's abandoned black BMW SUV. McElroy, 46, then walked around a cottage on the ranch. Almost immediately after stepping around the corner of the cottage, she started yelling, wrote Lawson. I'll bet. I mean, you see something that grisly, you better start yelling. Upon reaching the back of the cottage, she pointed towards the rear of the property and asked if that was a person. I could see what at first appeared to be a man sitting near a tree. As my eyes focused better, I could see a rope of some type going from the tree limb to the male. Lawson said it was clear that Middleton was dead. I could see that he had a gunshot wound to the chest and that he had a knot tied in an extension cord that was around his neck, and it was attached to the limb directly above him. The deputy said a search for Middleton's vehicle turned up 3 boxes of buckshot and a gun case, but no weapon. Huh. That's weird, isn't it? This is a whole weird scenario here. The details give fresh insight into the death of Middleton, a married father of 2, daughters aged 18 and 20, who was found dead on May 7th of last year. Okay? And there he is with his family. You never know when you're tied up with these kind of characters, when your day might be coming. All right? And there's a list of what we know about Jeffrey Epstein's visit to the Clinton White House. Forget about the flight logs, etc., which we only have partial ones. I mean, just take a look. And he basically says, hey, I was the Clinton initiative. I was the guy. It's me, Jeffrey Epstein. How you like me now? Middleton was a special advisor to Bill Clinton in the 1990s and signed Jeffrey Epstein into the White House on 7 of the 17 times the late pedo visited. Middleton also flew on Epstein's jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express. Most recently, he had been working for his family's HVAC business in Little Rock. The police report was released to DailyMail.com by the Perry County Sheriff's Office. According to the Arkansas Times, Middleton's family said he was suffering from depression. Yeah, I'll bet they said that. Middleton's life in recent years was a world away from the power he enjoyed in the 1990s. Maybe he got sick of being around a bunch of sociopathic, psychopathic, social climbing monster minions of a predator class. Who knows? But too late, buddy. You want to dance with the devil? Things happen. White House visitor, logs previously reported DailyMail.com, showed that he appears as the authorizing signatory on 7 of Epstein's White House visits, most of which were to the West Wing. In addition to being a special assistant to the president, Middleton was also an assistant to the Chief of Staff, Thomas Mack McClarty. Middleton left the White House in February of 95 and was accused of setting himself up as an international deal maker, exactly the kind of person that would appeal to Epstein. I'll bet he appealed to Epstein. So this is the entire report, or at least the, I guess the eyewitness account of Deputy Jeremy Lawson signing off on it. Just pretty wild. This is where we're at. Just want to point that out there. How do I get, are you kidding me? There we go. There we go. I want to go back to that. In 96, an investigation by the White House found that Middleton had abused his access to impress business clients and was barred from the executive mansion without senior approval. Middleton denied the claims. Oh, did he now? A number of Clinton's former associates have died over the years in unexpected circumstances, including Deputy White House Counsel Vince Foster. Vince Foster would be probably the most notorious of the incidents. surrounded by the so-called Clinton body count, so-called. His 1993 death was ruled a suicide, but sparked a slew of conspiracy theories about the involvement of the Clintons. After Epstein hanged himself while awaiting trial in 2019, Donald Trump retweeted conspiracy theories that Clinton was involved. Others whose deaths have been linked to the Clintons without foundation have been Seth Rich, the Democratic National Committee staffer, who was murdered in 2016 with no culprit having been found. I really don't like that they threw the Seth Rich stuff in there at the end either. You know, hey, I'm glad the Daily Mail is doing these stories because you're not seeing them anywhere else. But that's why you want to be involved with Whitney Webb, because Whitney Webb is the real deal, Holyfield. And once again, you can follow her at _Whitney Webb. You can find this very well worth your time. Whitney does a great job out there. So a couple of more stories before we, I'm just going to show these. We're going to be playing this video. Yep, we got that video. We got this video here. Doctors not allowed in hospitals at Sarasota Memorial Hospital if you don't go along with their great narrative. Even though nobody trusts their great narrative, you got to have a bunch of people that need a paycheck, all right, that are spineless, and will just continue to go along with whatever they're told. That's dangerous, by the way. It's real dangerous. So we got a couple of those clips, but I wanted to play this really quickly. Okay, and this is a clip of the amount of Starlinks that now surround Earth. All right, this is a little graph ski, a movable graph ski and hutch, if you will. Okay, now, I mean, take a look. Every little red dot represents a Starlink satellite. Take a look. Whole lot of them, huh? I'm moving around. I'm just saying it's pretty interesting. I pause it there. But what I wanted to do, see, I didn't want that one being the next one. That's the CubeSats. Actually, this could be a good one. So this is the Transformers Conference. These are representatives. She's a representative of Rocketdyne, but you also have representatives of NASA. And when you talk about these global satellite networks, you often have to talk about cube satellites. Okay, and once again, the ones that seem to be smaller in stature seem to be the ones that are in low Earth orbit. And then it seems like we have a balloon satellite system for the most part of large-scale satellites like the one we saw with the quote-unquote Chinese spy balloon. All right? So, first of all, let's talk about these CubeSats and really how, let's show you one before we even get going. I think that'll be a good thing. CubeSat NanoSat. We do it live. Or CubeSat NanoSat? Yeah, we do it live. There they are right there. So very tiny, very small. That's an example of a very, very small one right here. Take a look. Like handheld box. And actually, when I talked to Ian Crossland, now I think they actually do get bigger than that, by the way. Probably much bigger than that. But that's about how small that they can be. Here's another example. I like the hand as a reference, so you can really see what these things are. And here's one that's a bit larger than that. Various shapes, various sizes, different propulsion systems. Okay, so now I want the gentleman from NASA here. I think he was running the basic programs back in 2016.
Sets or CubeSats. When you talk about a revolution, I don't know whether there's anybody out there who has a son or a daughter who goes to St. Thomas More Elementary School in Northern Virginia. First elementary school to send a spacecraft into space this week.
Elementary school?
Elementary school.
Whoa.
It was launched. It was launched off the International Space Station. It was among a lot of CubeSats that were sent to station on a probably orbital or a SpaceX vehicle, because we have room to do that.
SpaceX sending things up into orbit and then them sending them out there in these networks.
And so there is an elementary school in Northern Virginia that can now brag about, my spacecraft is up there doing stuff. And once you get that into kids, it's like I did science fairs. My 7th grade science teacher turned me on to science fairs, and I never looked back. I can guarantee you that these kids at St. Thomas More, they are never going to be told we can't do that, because they're going to say, you know, when I was in elementary school, I made a satellite. What do you
mean I can't do that? I was making satellites as a kid. Now, we just saw what that global nano satellite, the Starlink network, looked like. This is, again, another NASA talking head that gets into the privatized industry, talking about that being an eventual global skin, basically, a new artificial skin around the planet.
Through ISS has been sort of seeding the small sat market. But you can't launch into all the different orbits from ISS. And so what we'll be able to do with our vehicle Launcher 1 is to put these satellites into other orbits. But I think what's interesting is that the U.S. is now leading a new area, which is the small satellite sector. And, you know, we're going to see tremendous growth. The geostationary, the number of geostationary satellites getting launched into orbit isn't really growing right now. But you're going to see this huge growth in small satellite constellations over the coming years that will establish essentially a new information skin for planet Earth that you know, helps us with navigation and communication and weather and remote sensing. And I think it'll be eventually sort of a permanent new skin around the planet. And a lot of that is being catalyzed by the work that was done inside NASA labs and now inside the national lab at ISS.
So I played that because, again, we're talking about the balloon sats. We just look at the Starlink grid. We've got the nano sats. We've got the different types of orbit. And now I want to talk about different types of propulsion systems that we may not be privy to. All right, can you imagine how far the technology is past what they're letting us know about?
You know, things like solar electric propulsion, another thing I like saying. So kind of blow our hair back. Give us a sense of like what you guys are working on, you know, that's really cool, and how it fits into all this.
You know, we're working on, like we said, we support government, we support commercial, and we do primarily propulsion, which is engines, big engines, motors, those type of things, as well as power. The key things, you know, neat things we're working on today, we're doing ion propulsion, which is a form of electric propulsion, and it reduces the mass. You talk about bringing the cost down. Everything we throw off the planet now has to go on a rocket that costs quite a bit of money, so the smaller you can make it, the cheaper it gets. So we have solar electric propulsion that we'll be putting on these next missions. We're working the technology on NASA contracts and internal, and it'll half or 1/10 the size, depending on how we do that. So that's one thing, and it looks just like, you see the blue glow from the old Star Trek, it looks just like that, and it is like that.
Oh, and it is like that. We've got other propulsion systems.
So we're printing rockets now. You know, we're doing 3D printing of whole rockets, and a number of people are doing it. And the hard thing about
So does that mean I can illegally download a rocket?
You know, well, I probably shouldn't talk about that. You know, rocket technology is still protected, right? No, but
So this is 2016. And this person's telling you, yeah, ion propulsion, other propulsion systems, 3D printed rockets at once. These are obviously made of separate materials than you and I are privy to.
it gets to that. You get a model and you can do that. The really big ones you can't do yet, but you can certainly do the smaller ones. We talk about the small sats. We can actually print a whole CubeSat propulsion system in one pass. And those are things that, you know, bring down not just the cost of the product, they're more efficient, they bring down time, and all of this just continues to fuel the cycle, like as George was saying it. So it's really a transformative time. We're building off the things that we've put in place for the last few decades, but now we can actually take them that next step.
Yeah, they can upscale them. Okay? And before we go over to the other side, I got one more clip, this microjet propulsion clip. And then we're going to go over to the other side. We're going to show you some more clips of some doctors that are saying some things we can't say on this end. We're going to go back to Davos. We're going to talk to the good people at Gavi and Moderna and all the places that we love, and they obviously love you. But let's talk about microjet propulsion systems just really quick.
of these hundreds and thousands of small sats or CubeSats is their free flyers. They don't have propulsion systems today. Julie and other propulsion companies are working on micro jets. They're micro rockets. So in a CubeSat that has the brains from Andy's telephone and a camera that came out of his telephone, it's going to have a little microjet from Julie's company and others. And they're going to be able to maneuver around, but most importantly, they're going to be able to comply with the law that says when you put a vehicle in space, it's got to be able to be controlled for a controlled reentry where it will not harm anybody on the ground. And we're going to be able to do that.
So there it is, guys. That's where we're at right now. Okay. One at a time, we're going to say goodbye. Come on over to redvoicemedia.com, redvoicemedia.com/Jason, or you can go over to the Podbean right now, listen to the rest of the broadcast. Remember, every day we do this, we release another one from 2 weeks ago, free over at redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. The links are down below for you guys to support me. When we go over to the other side, I'm going to show you this doctor who was kicked out of speaking. Even today, guys, here we are almost 3 years later. You still can't say certain things. So with that being said, YouTube, you're going to be the first ones that we say